How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Full Speed Friday podcast. I'm Brian, joined by
Colin, as per usual.
And today we'll be previewing the 2025 Daytona 500, the inaugural race of the 2025 NASCAR Cup season. So, jump right into it. We had qualifying, which was nice, because post-COVID, we didn't have qualifying.
No.
They just sent them out and let her rip. So that was really cool to see. They did 2-round single-car qualifying, with the top 10 fastest in the first round being sent on to the second round, and the 2 fastest of that second round being on the front row of the Daytona 500. So it was really cool to see, we got practice in the morning, but it was, competitive. We finally got to see the cars turned all the way up, set them loose, and we really got to see the new drivers like Riley Herbst. You had Chase Briscoe, and you had Shane Van Gisbergen. I don't think he raced the super speedway last year, so might have. But it was nice to see him in his first full time. Mm-hmm. And then we got to see the competition between the 9 open teams that were trying to qualify their way in, with Corey LaJoie for Rick Ware Racing. You had J.J. Yaley for NY Racing. Then you had Anthony Alfredo for Beard Motorsports, Chandler Smith for Garage 66, BJ McLeod for Live Fast Motorsports. And then you kind of have the heavy hitters everybody was excited to see. Justin Allgaier, obviously, for the Junior Motorsports Cup debut in probably my favorite paint scheme of the weekend in the 40 Travelers car. Mm-hmm. Obviously partnered with Chris Stapleton on that one, and that's a beautiful paint scheme. You also had Martin Truex Jr. coming and driving the Tricon garage car, Toyota. I was shocked. I thought it was going to be a one-off for 2311. But I guess in an interview, Martin Truex said they were negotiating this deal well into last year when he was on his way out. And then finally you have the Mr. 7-time Jimmy Johnson Legacy Motor Club. And Helio Castroneves for Trackhouse, making they say it's a one-off, but I think he's going to run a road course or two, probably Watkins Glen or maybe Chicago would be cool.
Yeah, I was thinking Chicago myself on that
one. Because, Indy does a lot of street race, so I think that would be cool to see. But yeah, those were the 9 open teams trying to make it, and I thought it was really funny in the beginning. Harvick and Boyer were going back and forth, and Toyota at this point never got the pole at Daytona, and Harvick was very quick to say it will not happen this year. So I thought the immediate response that he had was just hysterical.
Yes.
So
considering how Chase Briscoe won the pole in the number 19 Toyota.
Yes, which we'll get into. But yeah, it was kind of wow, that didn't age well there, Kevin, huh? It was about an hour.
Yeah.
You really aged out of that one.
Yep.
But yeah, so we got to see. You mentioned Chase Briscoe. I think him being on a pole, we should get to him last. Mm-hmm. But the real first thing that kind of stuck out to me as surprising was the Gibbs cars and the 2311, which is a Gibbs offshoot. Really fast, really consistent, except for Ty Gibbs. I feel like every year, we either have this discussion during the race or on the podcast that he is just the worst Gibbs driver in terms of just consistent being on pace. And even compared to Truex, who I think DNF'd 7 times last season, still had an average higher finish than Ty Gibbs.
Yeah, and I think what kind of comes down to is just I think he's trying to do some interesting things to stand out from the pack. The fact of the matter is, though, it really ain't working out well for him.
No, and he can't hide under that little rookie shield, if you will, in air quotes. Now he's, I don't want to say seasoned, because he's not a seasoned veteran at this point, but he's had a couple seasons under his belt, so he should know what to expect getting in the car. And then, then you look at somebody like Shane Van Gisbergen, who was able to hop in a Cup car after never driving one and then winning Chicago.
Right.
So, again, different, obviously, races, because you could come into a Chicago street race, street racing and stuff, but the guy never drove a Cup car like that before. So I thought that was really interesting. And, again, Ty Gibbs had a really good, almost said Busch Series, Xfinity Series, and then he came into the Cup Series when Kyle Busch went to RCR. and there's just been no consistency there.
Right. But the other thing too, and again, not to go away from he's a seasoned driver or anything like that, but he's been around the tracks a couple times. He understands the layout. He understands how the car handles on those tracks.
Yeah.
He should understand exactly what he needs to do to get into, not necessarily like lead the race or anything, but like get a better position.
Get a rhythm going. I mean, it doesn't seem like he can get a rhythm. Like, you think, like, we went to Charlotte and we did the race simulation, and you just got into a rhythm of, okay, let off here, turn in, get back on. And I don't know. I just don't see Ty Gibbs getting into these rhythms in the races that you see somebody like a Kyle Busch when he doesn't hit the wall, or a Denny Hamlin when he doesn't hit the wall, or a Kyle Larson when he doesn't spin out Bubba Wallace, or a Bubba Wallace when he doesn't spin out himself. But like you see, like Tyler Reddick, I feel like he was a very consistent, especially at that Darlington race. He was sick, but he had a rhythm, and he stuck to the rhythm, and he obviously won a race.
Right.
So it's just.
But I think what comes down to is that just like, you're in the car, you're in the moment, you're just like, all right, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I know what I gotta do to get wherever I need to finish and everything like that. And it just seems like Ty Gibbs, just for whatever reason, either doesn't do that or doesn't necessarily want to do that. And I think he's going to have to kind of sort of come to a conclusion like, all right, which way am I going to head here? Because if not, I don't think he's going to be racing the number 54 Toyota for many more seasons.
Well, I do because of his last name.
All right, well.
And that's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's easy to compare him to another relative who drives for his relative in Austin Dillon, who, regardless, has had consistent results. I mean, he's won a couple races. Obviously, one didn't really count because he wreck him. But he has a consistency about him. And when Austin Dillon's on, he's on. I mean, the Coca-Cola 600 he won, he was dominant. And both Ty Gibbs and Austin Dillon obviously have a similar upbringing. Their grandfathers own teams. They were probably at the track every weekend and talking to, Austin Dillon was around, like, the Earnhards and stuff.
Right.
And Gibbs was around, like, Tony Stewart and all. And, well, maybe not Tony Stewart, but later, like, Denny Hamlin and maybe Matt Kenseth and stuff like that. But all the people around Joe Gibbs, Ty Gibbs would have interacted with and kind of learned from. Same thing with Austin Dillon. I feel like comparing those two, because they're easy to compare, Austin Dillon has shown more promise, if you will, especially when you look at Austin Dillon's results just last season compared to someone, say, like Kyle Busch, who had spurts at the end of the year, but Austin Dillon was, in my opinion, just a little more consistent in the car.
Yeah. Consistency is key, and that's one thing I've learned with my limited time watching NASCAR and being a fan.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely, consistency is key, and that's something that the big teams, JGR, we just got done smack talking one of JGR's car, but the three cars of Bell and I think it was Truex and Hamlin, they were very consistent, and I think Briscoe is going to be a good kind of person to kind of maintain that. It's just Ty Gibbs, it brings it down.
Yeah.
We had this discussion about Hendricks last year with Alex Bowman, and he had a good last half of the season, Bowman did. But, again, just how much can you say, yes, this is our guy, when you have Larson and Byron and Chase Elliott winning 3, 4, 5 races a year in the playoffs consistently?
Yeah, but for Bowman, he shows up when it counts.
Exactly.
And he gets those top 10 finishes and everything like that, or wins the Chicago street race.
Right.
But even still, I just can't say the same for Ty Gibbs. He's just always, like, either in the top 20 or just nowhere to be found or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't... You can think of, like, Austin Dillon leading a couple laps, or obviously when he, won a race, but I can't think of, like, Ty Gibbs ever being in the lead and you're like, this guy's got it. He's going to win. I've never thought that, even if he's in the lead, I don't recall ever being like, oh, he can hold off Denny Hamlin or Kyle Larson or William Byron or even Alex Bowman, who was like, he's not going to put the bumper on you. He's not going to wreck you. He's a very somewhat respectful driver in my eyes. But I don't know. I just don't think the only big win I can remember was when Ty Gibbs wrecked his own teammate at Martinsville. It's the only big moment I can remember from Ty Gibbs' career.
Right.
So,
I mean, watching some of the action yesterday, or Wednesday rather, I should say. it just seemed like if Ty Gibbs was in the lead at any point during the 500, or even just in the duels, he was going to lose it just because of either a stupid mistake, again, not a rookie mistake, but just like you're not that well versed in the car at this point in time. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't see him leading the 500, so I guess it really doesn't matter.
No. But with that being said, let's talk about some guys that I think could win, or at least be in the front of the 500 here. I think the one shining star, with the exception of Briscoe, is Josh Berry. I talked about him in our season preview, and I said, Josh Berry with the 21 Wood Brothers car, they've always been a top runner in the Daytona 500. Obviously won it with a couple guys you're like, really? They won the race in that car? Mm-hmm. Harrison Burton comes to mind. Mm-hmm. But I think
Ricky
that...
Spinout, too.
Yeah. I mean, you have people who are like, I don't know how they pulled this off. I think Josh Berry is going to be the guy who can... He's going to definitely lead a couple laps. I can just see that car in the front row. I think he was, 5th fastest at the end of qualifying round 2?
Yeah, because there was a bunch of Fords that were 2nd through 5 in terms of speed. Yeah, it was Cindric, Priest, Logano, and Berry in that order.
Yeah. So, I mean, right there, you look at, wow, he's already in the top 5. He was a pretty consistent runner last year in the Stewart-Haas cars, which were just, essentially they were running abandoned old generation cars at that point. And Chase Briscoe managed to get a win, and Josh Berry was consistent. And I think we got to see, the spurts of Josh Berry that, like, Kevin Harvick and Tony Stewart all saw when they brought him in as the new face of Stewart-Haas before, obviously, they collapsed. And I'm excited to see that 21 car possibly win the race.
Yeah, for sure. But another thing that's kind of, like, interesting that could be something there, there's an article that my father sent me from Fox Sports. I didn't really read the article per se, so hopefully I'm not like recapitulating too much information here from the article. But it did say that Brad Keselowski could potentially win the Daytona 500. Now I would say he hasn't really been strong there. He hasn't won like the last 10-ish times he's been there, or even like remotely close. But there is that third RFK car this year, and they could work together as a team.
Yeah, I mean, let's just keep the train rolling, because you mentioned that third car is another Stewart-Haas releaser in Ryan Preece. So I could definitely see Brad Keselowski. I could see as an option. I would realistically see more Chris Buescher. I just feel like he's the more consistent driver of the... I don't want to say trio, because we don't know how Ryan Preece is going to look in this trio yet. But yeah, I could definitely see Keselowski, in it at the end. And those 3 cars, I think, if they link up, could be a really dangerous threat to, say, Penske, who, they're all of them are Fords, and maybe they all work together. Who knows? I mean, because you see it a lot at all the super speedways, is the manufacturers, regardless of teams, do find themselves, although the teams tend to try to want to link up together. Like one year I remember all 4 Joe Gibbs cars dropped to the back of the pack. I mean, this is like Kyle Busch and maybe even Carl Edwards was there at the 19 at the time, and they just all rode in the back as a 4-car pack. So maybe we'll see something like that from, depending on where the Hendricks cars end up in the duels, you're going to see those cars kind of drop back. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I've always learned about Daytona is the fact that anything can happen at the Daytona 500.
Right. The worst place to be is in the middle of the pack.
Yep.
Like, it's the worst place, because if one car goes, you're all gone.
Yep.
And, I think that's why the Gibbs cars did that. And I think it's a sound strategy if you have a 4-car team, but a 2-car team would just be, hung out to dry.
Right. See, then you're risking too much without no reward, because what if there isn't like some big like catastrophe of a wreck?
Right.
I mean, there usually is, but like let's just say there wasn't.
Right.
It's kind of a boring race to watch.
The years when it was like the car tomorrows, when they were just 2-car tandem drafting around Talladega, and you're like, well, this sucks. Yeah. It's just 2 cars going as fast as they can around the track, and nobody's in pack racing. So we'll see how it looks. I think if Joe Gibbs, with Chase Briscoe being on a pole, I don't see this being an option. But if Chase Briscoe wins like stage 1, and then they pit all of the 4 JGR cars if Ty Gibbs doesn't wreck, and you have the three cars in the 2311 camp. Then you have essentially, a all Toyota pack with all the same engines, all the same equipment. They could run through the field if they all just say, "Oh, we're just going to hang out in the back until the end of stage 2." So it's going to just depend on how aggressive Chase Briscoe wants to be, how aggressive Denny Hamlin wants to be, because I could see Denny Hamlin doing either strategy. I could definitely see him wanting to be like, "I'm just going to hang out with my cars for the race." So I don't know. I think Briscoe's not going to do that. I think he's going to want to win.
Right.
It's the first race in a new car, in a new team. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how teams play this out. And it was fairly consistent in terms of the second round qualifying of manufacturers. You had 3 Toyotas, you had 4 Fords, and you had 3 Chevys. So there was no real manufacturer advantage. Like, we didn't have like 6 Toyotas or 6 Chevys. So that really makes it like, okay, all of the manufacturers have somewhat equal speed. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Again, like I was kind of alluding to in my previous remark, the fact that anything can happen at Daytona. We can sit here and talk about, well, this is probably what should happen given the stats, given the engine mechanics and everything like that. Reality is, on Sunday or Monday, given the weather,
right,
this could all go out the window, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, some cars could look really good on Sunday. Maybe it rains, they postpone a race, and then the cars just, everything changes. And then you have, like, somebody like Ty Dillon could win the race because the cars change and they make the right adjustments, or who knows, Kyle Busch could be dead last like probable, usual, and he could make the right adjustments. His car could act better on Monday after the track has been clean, and he might win. Or they race Sunday at night and somebody's car who doesn't look good, like say Jimmy Johnson's or maybe Martin Truex, and they win a race. You never know.
Be great for Martin Truex not to blow an engine.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath because he's racing the same engine. So they probably just said, "Hey, this one didn't blow last year. How about this?" Yeah, sure. Boom, first lap. So we'll see how that goes when he dumps oil all over the track. But I'm hoping for him. It'd be nice to see. The pressure's off, right? Because you think last year the pressure was on. Last year, get in the playoffs. Don't worry about it now. Just go out there and race.
Yep.
That's why I'm hoping Jimmy Johnson does good. He won't, but I'm hoping he does because watch a guy win 7 championships. The guy that hasn't won 7 championships, but could be on path to do so. Starting on the pole, Chase Briscoe, number 19, Bass Pro Shops, Toyota for Joe Gibbs. I mean, couldn't have asked for a better start.
No.
You really couldn't have asked for a better start. His car was freaky fast. Shout out Kevin Harvick, Jimmy John's car. In round 1, he was 1/10 of a second faster than second place. I mean, that's outrageous. And in round 2, he was fastest again, and he was only 3/100ths of a second slower.
Yeah, I mean, round 2, I got the stat here. He turned a lap in 49.249 seconds, which basically equates to about 183 roughly miles per hour, which is just unreal.
Right. Well, I mean, in contrast, his round 1 speed was 49.218.
Yeah.
I mean, again, he was just so much faster than Cindric, who was in second place. But that doesn't necessarily equate to, like, he's going to win a race, because anything can happen in the draft.
Right.
But what this tells me is Briscoe's car is the most downforce balanced car in the field. Right? That's all qualifying tells us, is who has the best downforce, who has the best aero car for the single car qualifying. But, I'm excited to see him start off strong, because obviously had a rough couple of years at Stewart-Haas with the cars just being like, yeah. But, yeah, and then I mentioned Cindric in second. Good for him. We were pretty critical of him in our preview, so I think he listened. So, Austin Cindric, shout out to you. Saw you when we went to Penske, waved at you. You didn't wave back. I don't hold that against you. But yeah, so they're locked in. They don't have to worry about going to the duels or winning the duels. They're still going to participate. I think what we're going to see from both Cindric and Briscoe is they're going to see how their cars handle in the pack. And then if I'm Briscoe and Cindric, I'm parking my car. I'm just going into the garage.
Yep.
Just, see how it handles for a couple laps. Briscoe and Cindric will be out front. See how they handle. Maybe work together. Maybe see how drop back maybe and draft with a couple people. But I'm pulling off the track in maybe 10, 15 laps.
Yeah.
I'm not even risking it at this point. Especially at the end of the duels, people are going to be wrecking each other for no reason.
Right.
So, good for Cindric. And good, obviously really good for Briscoe. And then we had the race-ins, and very excited that we got to see Jimmy Johnson lock in, so he doesn't have to worry about winning a duel to be in, and Truex also locked in. So they can just kind of go out there and, mess around, see what happens. But that means the pressure's on for Justin Allgaier in Junior Motorsports. The pressure's on for Hilo Castroneves in Trackhouse. And then everybody else who honestly doesn't really matter. No offense to J.J. Yaley or Alfredo Sauce, Chandler Smith, and B.J. McLeod. Corey LaJoy, though, I'm going to keep my eye on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see what Corey LaJoy does, and Justin Haley with that absolutely amazing fire suit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see what happens with that. So that's about it. I guess what you mentioned something earlier before we started about manufacturers and teams in round the Duel 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you go and rip off of that?
Well, I think specifically I want to start off with the second duel, because what I noticed when I started looking at it is that a lot of team pairings were happening. Like the number 1 and 2 spots are Team Penske with Cindric and Logano respectively.
Yeah.
3 and 4 Hamlin and Bell for Joe Gibbs. 5 and 6 Larson and Bowman for Hendrick. And then you're pretty much kind of sort of okay, except for 8 and 9 is RFK, and then 17 and 18, or excuse me, 18 and 19 Jones and Nemechek for Legacy Motor Club. So I don't know exactly what that says about how people could work together to better qualify or not, but I don't know. I think it just is something interesting and something to keep note of, because compared to the first duel where it's a lot of like manufacturers, where you've got a bunch of Fords together up at the top, Chevrolets, Ford, and then Chevrolet has a nice stretch from spots 7 to 11, and then Toyota's got 12 to, I believe it was 15. Yes, 15. And you're back to Chevrolets for most of the rest of the lineup. So I don't know. I don't know if that could really go into figuring out where people can qualify or whatnot. What's your take on that?
I mean, we kind of touched on this earlier. I think we're going to have the teammates are going to be the number one person you want to help, and then the manufacturer teammates are going to be number 2, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I think in Duel 2, you're going to see a lot more teammates trying to find each other. In Duel 1, you're going to see a lot more manufacturer teammates trying to find each other. So that could definitely affect the lineups, for sure, without a doubt. I mean, I think everybody's probably more interested in Duel 2, because I think that's where you got the Hendricks cars and the Gibbs cars and stuff like that.
Yeah, because spots 3 through 6 are Gibbs and Hendrick respectively.
Right.
And then from there, like it's pretty much after that, it's just the legacy with Jones and Nemechek.
Which could be interesting.
Yes.
I mean, the only thing that it hurts for them is that the 2311 cars of Tyler Reddick and Bubba are in the first.
Yes.
But Riley Herbst is in the second duel, so he could be there to kind of maybe work with them a little bit.
Right.
But I wouldn't hedge my bets on that being the all-star team that wins,
the duel. Not at all.
But you never know. I mean, Riley Herbst definitely showed a little bit of speed in that car. Mm-hmm. So the 2 newest Toyota drivers, fresh off Stuart Haas, look pretty good in their cars.
Right. And I mean, not to discount 2311 here, but honestly, I think arguably the strongest would be Tyler Reddick, and he's number 14 in Duel 1.
Right.
Of course, underneath him is Bubba Wallace, also 2311. So
that's not a surprise, honestly.
No.
We talked about that in the preview. Bubba Wallace is the Ty Gibbs of 2311.
Right.
So.
But I mean, like, again, going back in Duel 1 with the Chevrolets in the middle of the pack, it's Busch, Elliott, McDowell, Allmendinger, Byron. I mean, that right there is kind of surprising to me, anyways, just because there's a lot of talent right there between those 5 drivers. Well,
Allmendinger's the least, but again, I get where you're at.
Right.
I mean, Allmendinger is more of a road course guy.
Right.
So I don't know if I guess if anything, I'm putting him in the front and I'm pushing him, and then we'll have like Kyle Busch, because obviously he's a good drafter. all of those guys, but are good drafters. So yeah, I would put Allmendinger in the front of the pack and just push him.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want him on my bumper because he'll wreck. He's not afraid to wreck somebody.
Right.
And he's just not like the super speedway oval guy. He's the road course guy. Mm-hmm. So.
I don't know. I just thought that was interesting because it's just there's just a lot of like talent in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, and again too, but behind all those guys are the Toyota drivers: Truex, Gibbs, Reddick, Wallace. I mean, it's just I don't know. I think we could really see either something really special or something really unique, which is how the duels play out.
Oh yeah.
For the 500.
For sure. I mean, it's our first real sight of seeing how the cars are going to look in terms of a competition in the packed. Mm-hmm. So.
Right, because you can't really count the clash. It's just
no, because they weren't in a pack. They weren't even really racing. Well, I mean, some of them were really racing, but I mean, like Chase Elliott didn't even really care. It seemed like because in a normal race, Chase Elliott would have put the bumper on anybody in front of him, just moved him out of the way. But he was just kind of riding around, Sunday driving, waving at people.
Right. So,
but yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how it goes. Like you said, anything can happen at Daytona. I'm feeling in our season preview, I made my early pick of Josh Berry be my wild card, and I said William Byron back to back. I'm feeling comfortable about it, although I really want to say Briscoe. I mean, I said his first race win would come at Darlington again. I think this is the chance for him to really win the race, get into the playoffs real early, and then the pressure's off. New car, new team. Just get used to it after that. You've already won a high pressure situation, the biggest race of the season essentially, minus the championship. So I think that's where I'm going to go. I think I'm going to say I'm going to stick with Byron. Josh Berry's still going to be my wild card, but I would not be surprised if Briscoe wins the race at all.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to be fair, you're only a couple of weeks off from your Darlington prediction. That race happens on April 6th, so we're talking about February 16th here, right. Potentially the 17th. So not too far off. I mean,
no, I thought he would need, especially like Daytona. I'm like, man, you're not going to be adjusted to a new car and a new team. It's a new manufacturer,
right?
But he obviously warmed up real well, and I read that part of him signing, he had to slim down his weight and stuff coming in, and I mean that shades to me of when Coach Gibbs had Tony Stewart slim down when Tony Stewart was prepping to do the second time of the Indy 500 and Coke 600 in the same season, same day, and they show Briscoe in his suit. I mean, he looked in a lot much better shape than he did last year. I think that's going to help him in the car in terms of stamina. That's obviously going to help you in a long, gruesome race like the Daytona. So I think all signs are pointing for a really good season for Chase Briscoe. I just hope the curse of the 19 car doesn't carry over.
Facts.
I mean, Carl Edwards was close to a championship in a 19 car, but obviously he got wrecked and didn't win, and then he retired. Then you had, you look at Truex, and he came over after winning a championship and didn't do squat. So, who knows? I'm hoping Briscoe breaks the 19 curse. I still think they should have given him the 20 since his idol was Tony Stewart, but I digress. But yeah, so Byron, my pick, Barry the wild card, Briscoe it could potentially happen.
Yeah. I'm with you on Briscoe. I guess I kind of agree with Keselowski, especially with that RFK. I'm interested to see how that plays out. Definitely will say Kyle Busch because Kyle Busch. I might say Zane Smith could pull it off too because he qualified 6th.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not anywhere near a wreck, he could obviously be up front or maybe in the back and just play it right.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, literally anybody could win. Corey LaJoie could win this race. J.J. Yaley could win with that super awesome outfit.
Right.
You don't know who's going to end up in victory lane.
Does Logano have a shot to continue based off of the championship last season?
Unlike Kevin Harvick, I'm going to wait to give my pause. My thought. No. I don't see Joey Logano winning the race. I don't know. I would put Brad Keselowski over Joey Logano.
I would do the same.
You know, the way I feel like Logano's going to do the same crap. I call it crap, but it was a really good strategy as last year, where he's going to turn it on when he needs to at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe he wins a race, or maybe he coasts through top 10s and stuff. But you know what? I wouldn't surprise me if there's 10 to go and he just says, I'm going to run over every single person in front of me and win this race. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't surprise me.
He's done it before.
He's done it before. I mean, he you know, Brad Keselowski could do it too. Almost killed Carl Edwards. So it could literally, anything could happen. But yeah, that's our Daytona preview. This is the last time we'll be kind of looking forward to a race and going back over a race this season without knowing the outcome of the previous week.
Yep.
So.
Well, except for that off week, maybe.
Well, yeah, the off week.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully something will happen. You know, they'll do a shake-up. Maybe if Larson and Christopher Bell do a dirt race or something, because I know they've been doing that a lot in the off season. Maybe we'll talk about that. I want to kind of look into Keelan Harvick there, looking real good, and Brexton. Mm-hmm. I know Kyle raced the Legends cars this past week for the first time in like 20 years. So, you know, maybe we start following the careers of our favorite drivers' kids now. I mean, it's going to be good. It's weird to think about that, but yeah, the next generation's on its way. It's Keelan Harvick and Brexton Busch. Mm-hmm. So, who knows? They can't be much younger than like Christopher Bell. I mean Ty Gibbs. I think Ty Gibbs is only like 20. So
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's only like 20 or 21.
Yeah, because I think he came into the Cup Series at like 18. So who knows? So I don't feel the need to go on. I think we covered everything we need to, and on the next podcast we'll talk about how William Byron ran over everybody and lapped the entire field twice, and Kyle Busch wrecked under caution and hit the jet dryer.
Yep. On lap 2, no less.
Yeah. Hey, at least he'll get a lap in. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm looking forward to Daytona. It's always a good race, and I'm looking forward to seeing the storylines that come out of it. And who knows? Maybe we'll be talking about how Josh Berry's locked himself into the playoffs.
Or Chase Briscoe, who knows?
Or Chase Briscoe, or a wild card. Yeah. Maybe Justin Allgaier wins the race, wins his duel, wins the Daytona 500, and everybody's like, well, crap.
I would buy a lifetime supply of Traveler whiskey if that was the case.
I think Dale Jr. would drink a lifetime supply of Traveler's whiskey in Victory Lane if that happened.
I'll believe it.
So with that being said, cheers to you, Chris Stapleton and Dale Jr. Good luck, Justin Allgaier, and the rest of the crew. We'll catch you next time. I'm Brian.
I'm Colin.
And this has been the Full Speed Friday Daytona 2025 preview.